Welcome to the Everyday Rabbi. We are in a very special studio with a very special guest, the one and only HiRez.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Rabbi.
It's our pleasure.
Appreciate it. In my home too. In my Chabad.
In your own abode, right?
Yeah, thank you for coming to me.
Yeah. So tell me your story. We met at Jewish Heritage Night. I think it was 3 years ago.
Is that the first time we met?
That was the first time we met.
Probably. I'm sure we maybe crossed paths at maybe Lipskier sometime.
Possible.
Maybe not.
And I saw you on stage. I saw you perform. I think Matt Levy was.
Oh, Jimmy
Levy.
Jimmy.
And I liked your style. So tell me a little bit about how that started.
Yeah, I've been making music since I'm 13 years old. Professionally, probably 15. I grew up Reform Jew, so like our extent of Judaism was like Adam Sandler and matzo ball soup, right? That's it. But then I started doing some digging. I'm from New York. My family's from New York, but we moved to Florida early on. Music was always kind of something that I turned to as an outlet. I always believed in God. I always knew I was Jewish. I always was a proud Jew, but I didn't know what that looked like or what that meant. But then I started doing some digging. I'm like, okay, we're from New York. You know, every time I would go visit my family in Brooklyn, they were in Flatbush. It wasn't, Crown Heights or anything, but I would always see this picture of this old guy everywhere. And my family wasn't religious, or observant or Orthodox, nothing. But I always see this old man, this picture, and I never questioned to ask what this picture was. And my grandma was very, spiritual is what she would kind of consider herself, but not observant. But she always, she would go to the Rebbe for dollars anytime she was able to, and she would always get a bracha.
So they actually have.
She has, yeah. I have a couple dollars now. They passed it to me, and I have coins that were like real tender that apparently like was actually acknowledged as like legal. I don't think anyone spends it, but it was like some real Rebbe coin that's like big, and then there's a little one. I have a couple of them, but it took me many years before I started really discussing God in the music and things like that. And it's not necessarily Jewish music, but I would say it's along like Noahide laws. I'm trying to kind of tuck them in there and preach to people.
Jewish inspired? Maybe?
It's Jewish inspired for sure. And, I have a lot of Christian fans. I have a lot of, monotheistic, any Abrahamic, I have Islam fans. I have a lot of fans that believe in God that come to my music. And a lot of people that can relate to the things I say and I discuss. And that kind of has evolved over the years because when I first started 15, 16, 17 years old, the music is what you would expect a 16, 17-year-old to rap about and sing about and drugs and rock and roll and things that, I didn't know any better. I'm a young kid and I was not taught any laws or I didn't know what a sin was. I didn't know what transgressions were. I didn't hear these words. I didn't know anything. I never even read any sort of bit of Chumash. I read nothing. I knew nothing of Tanakh at all. I didn't even know that was part of Judaism. I heard Messiah and I thought Christian. I didn't know Mashiach was a Jewish belief at all. All these remixes and these recreations of Judaism. I heard of baptism. I didn't know what mikvah was as a Jew, So
and to be fair, I think a lot of Jews have this sort of background.
100%.
Like predominantly most Jews.
Most Jews.
And we sit here in our high castle and we think, some Jews they act this way or they don't know any better. They really don't know any better.
No, they don't. I come from this world and it bothers me that much more because I come from this world. Look, I'm not ultra, I don't look or dress ultra froom, but I feel that look, compared to where I come from, my family, I'm the shliach of my family. I'm the rabbi of my family. And I cannot fit that role at all according to the knowledge that I have right now. But that just tells you the world where I come from this everyone I grew up where we had a bar mitzvah every weekend, a friend when we were kids. So it was a predominantly Jewish area. But it was everyone's driving to shul on Shabbos, and the rabbi's talking on a microphone, and there's like smoke bombs and Venmo codes, and that's the world that I come from, and but like you said, most of the people they don't know any better, and I try to approach these people with love because I see myself, my former self, in these people, but I tend to get more angry than I do loving because I don't find myself like fully Chabad where I'm like trying to put tefillin on everyone and running around. Have you put tefillin today? Like I don't necessarily identify with that yet. So I approach a lot of my former friends and family members, not former, but as far as friends go, with more anger than I do love. So I'm working on that.
Intensity maybe.
Intensity.
I think it's a very important point is that, as we go, coming from the other side, coming from, the more observant side, and being familiar with the more ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities and hearing their narrative and it's so hard to get across to them that you're really dealing with a bunch of children and just like your own kids. When we're dealing with our own children, the only way to come is with love. obviously, as they get older, we require and we demand and we expect more of them. And we have this term which is actually halachic in nature, and it's called a tinok shenishba. Tinok shenishba literally means a child which was abducted from very young. And when this child is older, you can't expect the same maturity level as it would have been if they grew up in a normal Jewish family.
Right.
And that's really, we have a generation of a bunch of,
I'm reading this Mashiach
babies.
It says that. It says that exact thing. It's
and the religious people are like, nah, they're not really like that. Come on, they know better. You're like, no, they really don't know better. They actually don't know anything.
Yep.
So part of our podcast, by the way, the objective, one of our objectives is to teach and share share ideas that maybe wouldn't happen. They usually happen behind closed doors, and to share them in public, and to get the word out, and to create an awareness of helping people know what they don't know.
Right.
And one of our guests recently said a great line. He said that if I would have had 1% of what I have now when I was younger, it would have changed my entire trajectory of Judaism.
For sure.
So how did that evolve?
I can relate to that.
The transition. Means different things today.
Yeah,
coming out of the closet.
As the Balchuva coming out. It wasn't a one-off thing, but it was definitely a snowball effect. I would say 2020 happens, COVID hits, everyone's locked in their homes, they're forced kind of in their bubbles, from governments and jobs, and whether it's by choice or not, most people were just kind of forced to their homes and forced to think.
And for context, you were already making music by then.
I've been making music since 2010, 2009, forever. Professionally since 2014, 15. So at least 5-6 years professionally. So I've been making music, and I lived so many lives musically, because I've been making it since I'm a young kid to a teenager to a young adult to now married and children. So I've evolved artistically. But COVID happens, and I'm locked in my home, and I'm not touring, and I'm not doing anything. And I'm at a point in my life, I'm 25 at that time when COVID hits, and I look down and look at myself. I already had a relationship with God, but it wasn't necessarily of Judaism. There was a foundation there, but it wasn't really built. I wasn't building it out yet. So I literally sat down for months and months, and I asked myself, what do I want for myself musically? Do I want to just be another artist that's putting out music, getting a paycheck, and selling my soul to this label or that label and just preaching whatever they want me to preach? Do I want to be married? Do I want to have children? Like I started asking myself these hard questions that most people just kind of never ask themselves. Sadly, into their 30s and 40s, we find people not getting married, not having children. That's becoming the norm. So I asked myself all these hard questions, and I was at this fork in the road. I had a choice. I said, I'm either going to run closer to God and run closer to religion and Judaism and my faith and my traditions and culture. Same with sobriety and music, and I'm going to run towards preaching a message in my music that my daughter and my future kids can actually listen to, and I won't be ashamed to play them. Some of my old music I would never dare play my children, So I asked myself, if I'm making this music and I would turn it off in front of my kids, what kind of message am I sending to other people's kids and other people's families? So I really asked myself these tough questions, and like I said, I was at this fork in the road, and COVID hits, and I know there's a Chabad down the street from me, and I just show up on probably Rosh Hashanah. I don't remember what few, 2020, 2021. Nissen and Rabbi Nissen, Rabbi Hanukkah just welcomed me with open arms, and it was so much love, and it felt like a rock star version of myself. Like they understood me. They understood my soul, and that's no shot at anyone else. I've met rabbis, and I don't think I was at a certain time in my life where I was ready to kind of accept that next step in my religious journey. But like I said, I'm locked down. I'm forced to think, where do I want to go with my life? And ever since then, I felt so at home. When I first started coming to Chabad, I wasn't keeping Shabbos, I wasn't keeping kosher, nothing. I just showed up, and I wanted to be a part of a community, just like what that's the reason Chabad exists. I wasn't wearing tzitzit. I wasn't wearing anything. I wasn't wearing a kippah. I wasn't covering my head with a hat. Nothing. So I showed up with sandals and a bathing suit and a tank top, and I'm standing next to a Haredi guy with the shtreimel, and that's actually what's happening the first time I came. And I didn't feel left out though. I think that the old me, the more reformed version of me, I was oh, those are the Chabadniks. That's for them, and this is for me. But I just felt so comfortable, and because of Rabbi Nissen, Rabbi Hanukkah, I just felt so at home, and it made me start diving further and figuring out who this, like I said earlier, who was this old man on my grandma's mantle and these pictures and these coins. So this is the crazy story. I actually, after all these years, I finally call up my aunt and I inquire about this. When did Grandma meet the Rebbe? Can you send me a picture of the dollar? Whatever. She sends me a picture of the dollar on the day I ask right away. I send it to Rabbi Konikov. I say, look, this is the picture of the dollar that my grandma got in 1992. I don't remember the exact date, but what's crazy was the day that I inquired about it was the exact date on the Hebrew calendar, 30 years to that date, that my grandma got the dollar. Right. That was the same day.
So it was your dollar.
That was my dollar. Yeah. I asked on the same exact day. It wasn't like July 3rd and July 3rd. Like, you know how that changed. It was literally the exact date in the real calendar. And it literally lined up perfectly. So I was inquiring about it on the exact day that my grandma was getting there, probably to the same minute or the same time. And that same, a couple of days later, I knew nothing of 770, nothing of Crown Heights. I knew nothing. That same week, I'm printing up merch, and I always get samples like sent to me, just like blanks, and then I could decide if I like it or not. Then I sell it to my audience. And the guy I was going through merch at the time, he sent me a bunch of hats and T-shirts with like stuff that he did for companies and whatever. So they have their logos on it, but I get to feel it. So I'm just walking around like with one of the hats on of his company. I don't even know what it is. And all it says on the hat, this is a Christian guy. All it says on the hat is 770. It has nothing to do with Crown Heights, nothing. It's like it said like some union in California. It had nothing to do with it. So I'm walking around with the hat. I come to shul on Chabad 770, and everyone looks at me like they saw a ghost because they don't expect me to know what that is. This is all within the same week. So I get the dollar on the same 30-year anniversary. I get a hat in my mail that says 770 on it, or wear it for no reason. Everyone's coming up to me. They're like, why are you wearing that? I'm like, I don't know why. They're like, you don't know about 770? Like, all within days. So now I look at it. I'm like, okay, this is God is sending me these signs. So I have to keep going, and whatever path I'm on, I have to keep going in that direction. So, and last thing, my grandma, the different grandma, she died around COVID time as well. And she was really the only person, still like more reform. But reform when you're born in the 20s is like froom compared to like how I grew up. Like still lighting Shabbos candles, keeping kosher, like all these things. So once she passed, I had this hard question I asked myself. I said, I know my siblings, I mean, God willing, they can come around, but no one else around me is keeping these traditions alive. So is it going to die with my grandma, or am I going to continue it? So that was, all of these were back to back to back. So.
Right, so it's a very important thing. The Jewish people have to feel connected in some way.
100%.
And some people connect vicariously through their grandparents. Some people connect through social media. Some people have a rabbi's number, and like if I ever need it, I have it.
Right.
And it's actually something very interesting happens when people lose that connection. They immediately go into crisis mode. I need to find some other connection.
Sure.
And there are things that sort of break that chain. Either a grandparent passes away, or they find they find that the access point that they once had is no longer there or no longer valid. During COVID was interesting because people were searching for something that they often took for granted.
Yeah.
There just wasn't as much going on.
Right.
So you're going through this process. You're going through this journey. What was that like? What was the discovery?
Wow. It was like no one wants to be forced to mature. Like especially in this world we live in. Like we're, especially my friends in the secular world we come from. Nobody's ready to take that next step to marriage. Like. I learned that kids were having, I didn't know this, that like Chabad people were having kids at 20. I didn't know it. So forgive my ignorance. It was totally ignorant. So like when I'm telling my mom I'm going to get married at 25, 26, she's like, isn't that a bit young? Like,
it's funny. It started at like 13, 14,
Of course,
15.
of course.
And this might sound insane, but people would get married. When you turned
old
bar
now,
mitzvah,
huh?
when you turned bar mitzvah, you had basically two choices.
Right.
Either get a job.
Yeah, or get married.
Or go study.
Yeah. Get study, right.
Marriage wasn't a choice.
That's true.
It reminds me of like LL. They ask you, they ask the guy, do you want dinner? He says, what are my choices? He says, yes or no. Do you want to get married? Like either you want to get married or you don't. So 13, 14, then 15, and then eventually 17, and then people start getting married 18.
So it's late now, 2021, 22.
Yeah, now it's like, so it goes to like the 30s. I think people are going to eventually start saying, maybe we should get married younger.
Yeah. There's an overcorrection for sure.
Right.
But
what's also interesting is that people, I think, were more mature back then. At
for
15
sure,
than we are
of course
at 30.
they are. Absolutely, they are.
Yeah.
I was talking about it with one of my trainers, a Christian guy, but he's a devout guy. We still try to find our ways to relate with each other, and we talk about basically that, where a 14, 15-year-old kid, exactly what you just said, they were much more mature now. Like 35-year-old kids are playing video games, living at home. So they're like, that kind of goes back to your question is, no one wants to be ready to, especially in the secular world, regardless of what religion you are. No one's ready to take that next step of, quitting your job and doing something better. If that's the case you're in, or getting sober if alcohol and drugs are a problem for you, or getting married, having children, being monogamous. Like it sounds stupid to somebody when it's obvious, when you know certain laws and they're obvious to you, and once they become obvious to you, it's like you're in the you get out of the matrix and you're like, whoa, like you understand the real laws. But when it's like you said, when you're this kidnapped generation, and you're literally walking around with like a sheep, like blindfolded the whole time, you have no idea. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me to make those harsh decisions for myself, because I was going 17, 18, 19, 20. I'm like, I'm never getting married. I'm a rock star. I'm a rapper. You know what I mean? Like you can't tell an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid who's touring the world and I have millions of views online that I got to get married and I have to have children, I have to settle down, and you can't tell somebody that, But like I said, I was able to force myself to make those decisions, because Rabbi Nissen told me a great, I'm sure you've heard a million stories like this, but life's like a down escalator, right? So you're either, if you can't just say, I did a lot of things to better myself this week, because life's going to be bringing you down. Satan's bringing you down every single day. So unless you're walking forward and walking against that up escalator, then you're coming down. There's no like stagnant point where you're like, I learned enough, let me just cool out for a bit. So that was my choice. I'm either going to keep walking forward, or I'm going to keep walking, or the escalator is going to take me down. So it wasn't easy. I don't think it's easy for anyone to say, I have to go to the gym now and I have to get in shape. And that's how I felt spiritually. I had to really get my mind right.
So you're big online. YouTube, Instagram. You're obviously outwardly Jewish.
Yeah.
So and there was a transition in that as well. Obviously,
Sure.
became more
visibly
an out of the closet Jew,
Yeah.
And more visibly Jewish and more outwardly Jewish. And obviously, your audience has seen that and experienced that with you. What was that like in terms of? I mean, I'm sure if you're online and you have any ssort of Jewish presence, you're going to get the
or
backlash,
you even look Jewish.
the backlash of stupidity and questions as well.
Yeah.
I think there's two sides of it. There's the stupid side,
Sure.
which is people just trolling comments,
Sure.
which you could expect as any sort of entertainer, artist, etc. But then there's also people who are questioning what you're doing. But regardless, there's definitely this resistance, which in addition to being up and coming and successful, people tend to hate on success in general. Maybe that's why they hate on the Jewish people. But as a Jewish artist, what's that been like?
Yeah, so I've always openly, said I'm Jewish. Like I never was ashamed of my Judaism. Like you said, I was maybe less visibly Jewish, I guess, as far as the attire or as far as maybe the music or the presence or the posts online. But I never was scared to say I was Jewish. But you're absolutely right. It was more hidden and more kind of beneath the shell. It was kind of down there. But as I started becoming more vocally and visibly Jewish, yeah, it was definitely met with some backlash and some issues for sure. But I've had thick skin my whole career since I'm a young kid, so I never really took it personal. Like you said, I kind of looked at it like, oh, it's a bunch of trolls online. So I really am not too bothered by it. But yeah, like it's disheartening to know, like, okay, like I'm more visibly Jewish online, and it is met with more backlash and more issues and more problems. But I'm also, as you know, and as people know who follow me online, I'm not like, especially coming from like the more liberal reform kind of Smolanim Jewish side that I come from, I kind of ran more towards like conservative American, if that makes sense. Whereas also there's a problem. There's no home for a Jew, like politically, at the end of the day. But I'm not too scared of words online. I'm not like running to the ADL, please, can you help me? Somebody made fun of me. Can we censor their speech? As you know, I'm very pro Second Amendment. I'm pro protecting my family. So I'm very pro like the bear Jew from Inglourious Basterds. I don't know if you're familiar with the reference, but I relate to that kind of Jew. I relate to the more rugged, the more Murder Inc., that type of Jew. I'm not really related to the, please, sir, we need to censor this guy's speech, So it doesn't really bother me when somebody, did Elon Musk do the Chayil Sig? Did he do? You know what? I actually don't care if he did it. It's not my. I don't care.
We don't get riled up by a hand motion.
I'm not riled up by words, by motions. Look, if legislation starts getting passed that says we can go, God forbid, do this X, Y, then sure, we'll start worrying. Until then, these are idiots. At the end of the day, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about, I laugh at these people. The way they laugh, they look at me like it's laughable. You know what I mean? You're a joke to me.
And it's been the same way on our end. It's like, there's obviously comments, people, look at things out of context. Sometimes things, just require explanation. And that's, again, one thing we're trying to do here is explain and share. And instead of criticizing, listen for a little bit. Just understand and pay attention to what's going on.
2 years for a reason.
Because we never had a platform for thousands of
100%.
years. Any platform.
I know.
I mean, and this is historically true that, they would, the church would basically walk into a synagogue, lock the doors, and they would give their speech. You'd kick the rabbi off the pulpit for an hour.
I never heard that.
We're talking about what we want to talk about. Yeah. And if you fight back, it's not going to end well.
Yeah.
And, today for the first time, people are starting to hear the authentic Torah, Jewish message that they never heard, not since Christianity started, not since Islam started.
Right.
I mean, this message is 3,300
more
years
authentic
old.
Than that, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But they never heard it. So, you want to criticize Talmud, you can criticize Talmud all you want.
Sure.
But you might want to know what Talmud is before you do.
You know what I love? I love I love when people say, I read the Talmud this weekend. I'm like, wow, you read the whole Talmud?
We had a girl who was coming by. She was very Jewish, but very Christian in mindset. And we would talk, and I would always reference the Talmud because that's what rabbis do, right?
Sure.
And at one point she said, I don't believe in the Talmud. And I said, well, just caveat before you go further. The Talmud is a book of logic.
Sure.
And when I say logic, it really is mathematical in certain ways. You just like a lawyer in court will sort of go through
every possibility.
The possibilities and say, okay, well, it must be this if it can't be that.
Yeah.
And so I said, there's more of a deductive approach to Talmud. So you don't believe in it, you study it.
100%.
And then once you study it, you can have your own opinion.
Sure.
But it's very, don't just throw out the book. So she says, okay, I'd love to, read the Talmud. How can I get a copy?
A copy.
I said, well, just for context, it's about 60-something volumes.
Yeah.
I think 70-something in English, right, with commentary, and it's not easy reading.
No.
Some people try to get through it every 7 years.
Yeah.
It's not exactly something that, I think there's, I forgot the exact number, it's something like 7,500 pages of Talmud.
Yeah.
So good luck there. But I think that's part of, people taking a step back and realizing that, we have 3,300 years of history,
right?
Which means 3,300 years of questions and arguments and answers.
Yep.
And we've been down this road many, many times before. Anti-Semitism is nothing new.
Sure.
Forget about the trolls and the hate and stuff.
Right.
But just, one comment that comes up often is, you guys come from some other culture and
we're aliens.
We're aliens and the real Hebrews and how do you respond to this? Or do you respond?
I
to
don't.
it?
So I did for a long time.
Job,
I did for a while, where I realized that I was just validating these arguments. Like you can every once in a while, I will entertain it if I feel someone is actually, a lot of people, we're just asking questions. We're just asking, and then that kind of the goalposts end up moving. You're not actually asking questions. You don't just hate the Israeli government. Then that trickles down to, so I stopped defending my position. I stopped arguing my position with certain people. If I think truly like you want to have a conversation and you actually are approaching me with love and not a sword or not a whatever, and you're approaching me with your belief and my belief, we can maybe have this conversation, then sure. But I also don't look at myself as like Ben Shapiro or like Jordan Peterson. Like I'm not here to like debate or argue people or like say like, I'm not trying to own the leftists or own the anti-Semites. Like that's not my job. I'm an artist. I'm a father. I don't have time to argue with every troll online. Like I said, if I feel that there's some merit to your questions, I'll answer it. But if I feel you're trying to get me in a gotcha moment and the goalposts are always going to get wider and wider and wider, and it's, you denounced the part of the Talmud, but you didn't do it today. You did it yesterday, but not today. I didn't see your tweet because the algorithm didn't show me it. So how do I know you actually tweeted it? It's like I stopped arguing these positions. Like I wanted to defend myself so bad, but then I started learning even more and more and diving into my own, belief system and I read the Talmud in one day. No, I'm just kidding. But I started reading these things and learning these things, and I'm reading all these books of Mashiach, and I'm learning that like a lot of these things are meant to happen, and they're meant to play their roles, and I'm meant to play mine. And I'm not going to change your mind, and you're not going to change mine. And I guess we're going to find out in the overtime, what happens.
Right. So in terms of music itself, what was your inspiration getting started? Who inspired you, and who does inspire you?
Yeah, definitely I didn't know any kosher music. I didn't know any I didn't even know Jewish music existed. So when I first started, it was, ironically enough, it was Kanye West. It was Jay-Z, it was Biggie Smalls, it was Tupac, it was Wu-Tang Clan. It was definitely a lot of East Coast, coming from New York, it was East Coast, super like gangster hip hop. It was nothing that I listen to now, I find myself not even listening to rap. I listen to baby davening with my daughter. You know, we open one eye, we open two. You know what I mean? We want Moshiach. Okay. Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. That's really all I listen to. And when I finally have time to listen to my own music, it's reggae, it's jazz. It's like not really a lot going on. But yeah, I grew up listening to a lot of that, and I do appreciate a lot of the Jewish music that exists now, but it's just what I grew up listening to and what I listen to now, it never really found its way into my current life. But I'm inspired by it.
And your music itself has a Jewish, like you said,
undertone.
It's overt undertone, but also there's Jewish content in it, right?
Yeah. And I was talking with Rabbi Ed the other day, and he said, like, even if I'm not quoting certain laws and rules and scriptures and this and that, he's like, at the end of the day, like, I'm wearing tzitzis, I'm appearing visibly as a Jew, and I'm rapping about one Almighty God at all times.
Is that your theme? Is that like your?
That's my theme, especially the last few years. Especially, yeah. It's I'm definitely rapping about just my love and fear, obviously, and my respect of and my relationship with God and how that's grown over the years. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And my wife was telling me over the years, before I became a little bit more visibly Jewish, before I grew the beard. That's funny. My wife used to never want me to grow a beard because that's just a normal thing when you don't have beards, right? But as soon as she's like Rabbi Connie's like, there's there's merit and there's spirituality and there's strength and there's wisdom behind masculinity. And then once she learned the Kabbalistic behind it, the Kabbalistic reason, she's like, okay, you could grow a beard. We did all these things in our life. I want to come back to what you said in a second, but we did all these things in our life where we're never owning guns, Jesse. And then she sees the anti-Semitism. Okay, we can own guns. It's like, we're never gonna live on a farm in a compound around a place. Like now we're like looking into Chabads, like in with areas like compounds and farms, we can get chickens and stuff. So all the things that we said we'd never do, we're getting closer to. But I wanted to bring up a point that before all of this happened, she was always like, be more visibly Jewish online, say it proud, do all which is a great point. But I learned when I go to Zusha's comments, when I go to any of these people's comments, it's Christian people still commenting, like not realizing, like there's a disconnect. So no matter how visibly frum you look, it's like I get these comments where they're like, you're Jewish, but like Christian by belief, right? Like there's always some caveat, no matter what. So I saw these comments and I said to my wife, I'm like, look, if they're commenting on Zusha's music, there's no hope for me to like, okay, I get it now, because that's their belief system. Like, I get it. And there's no hate. Ben Shapiro said it the other day. He's like, if you're coming at me with a Bible and not a sword, like, I'll sit down with you. Like, I'm not going to change my mind. He's like, but like, I'm happy we could sit down and have these conversations. So I feel the same way with my Christian fans, with my Islam fans. Like, if you want to just talk to me about your belief system and I'll talk to you about mine and we're not killing each other over our belief system right now, then I'm okay with that. But yeah, I tell my wife, it's like, there's nothing more I can do. I got tzitzis on. Sometimes I wear a kippah visibly. Sometimes I'm this. I have a couple records that are strictly Jewish. Of these that I've performed. It's like, I have a record called Elohim. I have a record, Hope, that samples the Israeli national anthem. I have like these obvious Jewish records that are out there with a lot of views too. So, and then I'll bounce back and forth to my other music. But there's not much more I could do to like prove to the world that I'm a Jew besides just being a Jew.
And was going to get to the inspiration side, right? With what does Chabad teachings play a role in music? Like, is that
100%? What I love, and I think that because Chabad is the biggest kind of outreach when it comes to Judaism, and because they're everywhere, I think that the anti-Semites love to cling on to that, right? Because that's the only thing they know. That's it. There's no Reform Jews, like there's no Reform like as far as like setting up shop everywhere that all have the same message. There's no even ultra Orthodox people that are setting up the same message. Like Chabad is what's connecting the whole world as far as Judaism goes. So I understand why these anti-Semites cling on to it. It's the only thing they can find to cling on to. But yes, to answer your question, what I love about Chabad and why I love the belief system is I grew up Reform. So to me, the most in South Florida, I left New York, so I never knew of ultra Orthodox. I never knew of that at all. So ultra orthodox people to me were Chabad. That was like whoa, it was mind blowing to me. Like we would be driving to our shul on Saturday and we'd see people walking, and then like that's just how we grew up. It was like like there was for some reason. And I love my mom, honor your mother and father, obviously. I respect my parents, they gave me life. But I was just raised with, there was this separation between my Judaism and Chabad's Judaism. And once I came to Chabad and once I started thinking for myself as an adult, I realized that Chabad was the perfect center of everything. Like it was the people bringing Reform people together. And when the ultra Orthodox people are traveling, they don't have, like I said, they go to Chabad. That's where they go daven. So I started realizing, yes, the belief system, the way that they pray, the way that they teach, the way that the laws are kind of perceived and passed on, like the way people are educated, it's so comprehensible, it's so understandable, it's so digestible, and I resonated with it, tenfold. And once I find myself really trying to find balance between everything when it comes to politics, when it comes to culture, when it comes to music, and I felt that Chabad was that middle ground. It was like, I don't really like this. This is too much a little bit.
So it's interesting because, from my understanding, the Chabad movement really started where you had a bit of a fracture within the Jewish world.
I'm sure.
In many ways. You had the religious-secular fracture,
right,
which really started around 250 years ago.
Sure, yeah.
With the advent of reform and so on, liberalism and
sure,
and this, Napoleonic, mindset of life. And then you also had the division between mystical Judaism, Jews who sort of were focused on the divine and meditation, all that stuff, at the expense of anything rational.
Torah, yeah.
And then you had the Talmudic school, which
sure.
was almost at the expense of anything mystical.
Sure.
and Chabad, the Alter Rebbe particularly, Rabbi Shneur Zalman Liadi, was the first one to really bridge those two and say, what if we think of mysticism in a logical framework? And it really borrowed from both sides, and it really changed, if you think about
100%.
it, it changed the Jewish world. Because 100%. Suddenly the mystics and the mystical Kabbalists and the logical, Talmudists
sure.
were able to have a conversation, not only a conversation, but a lifestyle.
Right, daven.
That was very cohesive. That was the word I was looking for, is that it work. Every piece has to work together. Yeah. It has to. Otherwise you get a very fragmented, sort of like, talking about growing up, Reform. And this is what I hear from many others, is you have a very fragmented life. You have a very fragmented perspective on
100%. Everything's confusing. Everything is illogical. Everything is. It's because I'm so thankful to my family and my parents, and I'm thankful to God because most of my friends that were given this watered down Torah, like they didn't make it out the way I did. Like they totally threw it out because what they were taught, they thought that was the extent of it. So when you're taught, something that's a totally garbage version. I don't mean to sound.
Someone's nodding in their head in the background.
You're better. Look, you're better. A lot of people will say, and I wanted to disagree with the sentiment, but like statistically, it's true that you're better off not being taught Torah than being taught a watered down version of it. But I'm thankful that I was taught anything of it because that, for me, even though that's the rare case, it did play a massive role in my life. I went to a Reform Jewish camp, so I'm around Jews all day, all the time, summer, during the year, school. But so that little seed was planted in me, but I can't say the same for any of my friends or family. Literally any of them. I don't know any of my friends I grew up with that are Shomer anything, that are nothing. Like before I got married, I learned what Shomer Nagia was, and me and my wife literally did that for a whole year. Like we had no idea. Like I grew up in
no touching,
nothing for a whole year, nothing for a year because we knew like it was hard. It was very not to be too in depth with it. Like I grew up in a world where sex at a young age and monogamy, that's like monogamy was not normal, and sex at a young age and drugs at a young age, that was like built into the fabric of society. Like, so when you're doing like one of the two things or two of the three, you're actually a good kid in these people's eyes. You see what I'm saying? Like when you come so far away from the laws.
Kiddish on Friday night.
Good enough. Exactly. Like when you come so far away from the laws, you start negotiating with God. Well, God, I did do those but I didn't transgress in that part. So, I have a very strange outlook towards, as I've said this whole conversation, towards the Reform movement because of what I went through, what my friends went through and have gone through. Look, my friends are, Hanukkah fell on Christmas this year, which happens very rarely. And I literally witnessed, like a lot of the other times people can say, well, I'm just celebrating, it doesn't fall with Hanukkah this time. It's like there's always some built-in excuse. But I literally witnessed night one of Hanukkah, like not lighting Chanukiah. Like they're at Christmas parties on Hanukkah. And it just killed my neshama, it killed my spirit. Like all these things, but all these things push me closer to Hashem because I see where I come from. And when I do move, to my family, that's in the plan when I, grandparents are going to help me with my kids and stuff like that. When I do end up moving to the area, like I do plan on being the shliach of all my friends. I'm going to be like, as little as I know, I'm going to come.
And it's always hard because, you want to be respectful and you want to be loving and you want to be, open, and you don't want religion to get in the way of your relationships. At the same time, you're so
can't sacrifice your own
eager to share and to just hear me out. The tree is, it's there. It was their religion. It was their culture. It was their, and nothing. We're not bashing anyone else's culture, but not to value and not to care, and not to have pride in your own upbringing, not to know, right? Not to want to know.
100%. That's exactly the point. Is like they being non-Jews would never stop their holiday for a Jewish holiday. So why are Jews stopping their holiday for a Christian holiday? Or that's my point. Is like you said, go hang out with your friends. Go hang out with your, I'm not denouncing that life. We're in a very politically correct world. We're in a very accepting, loving, liberal world. This is where we live in, and I'm okay with that. Like I said, we're not coming at each other with swords and guns, as often as we were. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, why would we be accepting and loving and tolerant at the expense of our own belief system?
So it's funny you mentioned Chabad being at the center. I think politically it's 100%. We try to stand in a very unique ground. Which is very small, by the way. It's very hard to keep balance. In not being hardcore conservative, Christian, and not being liberal, lose our minds, lose our hearts. And it's a very mind-heart approach. In the sense that there's what's right and that doesn't change, and you can't care about your feelings. And what I was going to say before is like when you exercise, you're trying to grow, you're trying to get stronger, and that's never easy. Being Jewish and being more observant and learning more and doing more is never easy. The 6 hours after meat never gets easy, and the not touching never gets easy, and the keeping Shabbos never gets easy, especially as business becomes more enticing and more opportunities come your way, especially in the music business. At the same time, there's also the heart, there's also the feeling, there's also the emotion. And emotions also could be reckless in a certain sense. So finding balance on both sides and staying, what Maimonides, Rambam, people always put Maimonides in the logical category, but I think he was actually a very balanced person.
Sure, I agree.
And very emotional and very, caring. And everyone always points to his, halachic legal books as his logical basis, but they forget about the letters to the people of Teman and the letters to the people who are, struggling with their Judaism, literally in the face of anti-Semitism and the Almahad, massacres and so on, trying to maintain their Jewish identity and, balancing a very chaotic world. And, I had a podcast with my brother, Mendy, recently. And we sort of come from the opposite perspective. We came from a world which was so wholesome and so cohesive and so all the puzzle pieces fit together. And then we were introduced to a world of fragmentation, a world where everything's just chaos.
Right.
And for us, it was we had to learn that there's a world like that there's people like that, society is that messed up. How could this have happened? And I think throughout Jewish history, we had times where we were more, you go through the Bible, you go through Torah, you find times where we were doing awesome, which ironically Torah doesn't talk about so much because what's there to talk about? Everything's great, come back tomorrow or another update. And then you have 7 pages about getting over idols and all that stuff. And then we come back together and we regroup and we say sorry and we make amends.
Do it again.
We establish ourselves. 20 years later, there's another crisis, new generation, new king, new prophet, whatever. So from my perspective, I think, meeting where we are is we have to be the influence for our friends and family, but not in a way that ever compromises the relationship that we have, because the relationship, I think, is more important. We had this funny, comment recently. It was our comment about being an American Jew or being a Jewish American. And just to touch on that for a second is that, we are Jews essentially. And that we've been Jews for 3,300 years, way before America was even a concept. And here we are in America, and America's awesome, right? America's the land of the free, home of the brave. But yet we've learned to be Jewish in America.
Sure.
And we had to learn. It wasn't that easy. People originally said you can't be Jewish in America.
Right.
You can't be Jewish in America outside New York City, I think. The statement evolved. But at the same time, we are Jewish. I think that was the big Hanukkah coming off of Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Is this tribalism versus globalism idea that you could be a nationalistic Jew,
Yeah.
if you want to call it that. Like America, love America, stand by America, and hand over the heart, sing the national anthem. At the same time, say a bracha on the Torah and study Torah,
100%.
and share that viewpoint, and they're not contradictory in any way.
Right.
If they were, maybe it would be a problem.
Sure.
Being a Russian and being a Jew was a lot harder than being American and being a Jew.
Right.
So thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, it's very true. I think I don't want to say struggled. I've struggled to myself. I haven't struggled with that identity. I've struggled to get that concept across to people. The fact that, like you just said, because you have and maybe I don't want to argue that position anymore. Like I said, but you have the Fuenteses of the right, where it's like, you're a Jew, you're always going to be loyal to Israel no matter what. You're a traitor here to America, blah, 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 blah. Go back to Russia, go back to Israel, go back to where, all these things, right? Then you have far left people, the AOCs of the world, where, it starts with the Israel conflict and somehow that's our fault thousands of miles away. People comment on my things, going back to comments. They say, stop killing Palestinian kids. I'm like, I'm in Florida. You know what I mean? First off, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? It's like, I never entertain those in the comments, but they're just so ridiculous. I don't entertain them. But I try to encompass that concept that you just said, pro-America, pro-God. America gave my grandparents a place to come, right? A place to escape communism and escape free, Marxism. And I think that's where people get angry is a lot of the Reform Judaism specifically. It's almost like this Stockholm syndrome where my family, you left communism, but you still like the American version of whatever that looks like. Not to hate on always, like you said, Chabad tries to blah, 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 but it's more conservative in nature, I guess, compared to where I come from.
In action.
Okay, sure.
Maybe in mindset it's a little bit more liberal.
Right, exactly. But
that's the blend.
100%.
Yeah.
But I try to find that balance, like you said, where I'm not a nationalist where I'm not dying for America. But I'm also not dying for Israel. You don't see me in Israel joining the IDF. So I'm in this strange position where I love America. I love what it did for my grandparents.
What General Patton say? Don't die for your country. Get the other guy to die for his country.
I never heard that. That's funny. Yeah, but I personally, I love that you brought that up because that's where I feel like I fit in. I fit in with this pro-America, pro-God, pro-gun conservatives. But I'm still, at the end of the day, I'm still Shomer Shabbos. I'm still keeping kosher. I'm still representing my people at the end of the day, before anything. I think a lot of people have no idea, especially anti-Semites, when they see Israel, they don't even know they don't know the concept. Israel is a nation. Israel is a name. Israel is a people. Israel is an ideology. There's so many. It's been
a government for 75 years.
Right, exactly. Israel is a government. There's so many different possibilities. You don't have to love all of it, and you don't have to hate all of it. You don't have to, all of those things are not necessarily independent. They're not mutually exclusive. You know what I mean? So, but I'm not trying to defend my position anti-Semites while I'm half doing it right now. But I don't know. I guess once I learned that I was able to be a proud Jew, a proud American, a proud whatever, then I really found my identity, especially the last few years, for sure.
There's that saying in Talmud, Zil Gemara, which is go and study.
Yeah.
And I think that's a message that everyone could take with them is go open a book.
Yeah.
Instead of yelling and screaming when no one's listening anyway. By the way,
right?
Go learn something. And I think that for a lot of people, the first book you read, or the first rabbi you talk to, or the first if they know something. Not every rabbi knows anything, but to explore your own Judaism, or to explore Judaism, right? Just to know, and don't explore. I remember I was in India once, and I met this kid, and he was learning Hinduism.
He's a Jew, or no?
Of course.
It always happens like that. Yeah, it always happens.
Yeah, Vishnu Goldberg.
Yeah.
So,
Vishnu, yeah.
I said, why are you exploring Hinduism? He says, because
it's peaceful. It's
because I fell out of love with Islam.
Right.
I said, why'd you study Islam? He says, because I didn't like Christianity.
Oh.
I said, where'd you start off?
Where's the Jew?
Oh, Reform
Judaism.
I said,
there it is.
You ever explored Judaism?
No.
And he said, well, I didn't like Judaism. I said, to be frank, you never knew.
You don't know it.
Yeah. I said, when you went to church and you went to mosque and you go now to the temples in India, are you going to the Reform temples? You're going to the hardcore,
exactly.
You want the authentic, imagine you go into a Hindu temple and everyone's just sitting around
right.
smoking out.
Yeah.
That's not what I came for.
You go to the mosque, they're eating pork.
I want the authentic experience. So if you're a Jew, at least, the very least,
give yourself a chance.
If you don't like it, that's a different story, right? But at least explore your own your own heritage, where you came from. Everyone always says, Orthodox, Reform, Conservative. The truth is, those are all new labels.
Yeah.
They didn't exist 250 years ago. Everyone was Jewish.
Right.
Everyone says, oh, my great-grandfather was a rabbi. He wasn't a rabbi. He was a Jew.
He was a Jew. Every
and
Jew
all
was a
Jews
rabbi.
looked like
Right,
that.
exactly.
No one invested in shavers. Everyone just, it was cheaper not to shave. And not to mention the Torah encourages beards and all that. There was this culture of everyone kept kosher. Not only that, but if you left the Jewish community, there was nowhere to go.
Right.
There was no one who to embrace you as we love, we love secular Jews. Come join our club.
Sure.
Today, of course, people could feel comfortable, but as the secular influences sort of fade, there's a bunch of Jews left who are just out to dry, and they have nowhere to belong. So they don't go to any synagogue or any Hebrew school, either because their grandparents didn't like it or their parents didn't care or didn't send them. And now we're left with this kidnapped generation. I love that, who basically are. They don't even know that they don't even know. Like you said, at least they're not misinformed; they're uninformed,
right?
And which sometimes is easier. And we could reach out to them and with love and with acceptance and with tolerance and with patience, and say, listen, it's a la carte Judaism. It's come and look at the menu and see what you like and try something. And 9 times out of 10, when they do that, they'll say, it's interesting. I want to know more. I want to learn more.
Absolutely.
So it's a good segue to another podcast.
Yeah.
But closing thoughts.
I'm happy to just have this conversation. It's one of those ones, like you said, it reminded me what you said early on. It's a lot of these conversations are said behind closed doors because I think a lot of Jews are, especially even me, like I don't want to upset my Christian fans. I don't want to upset my non-Jewish fans, like because they're gonna just take something the wrong way. That's not my goal. But this conversation, my goal is to be publicly, coming out like to be publicly comfortable, to just, I'm confident in who I am. I'm confident in my belief system. Like, I don't hate you, just like I hope you don't hate me. If you do, I really don't care, like we discussed. But I'm very happy to have these conversations publicly and comfortably, and because I'm sick of like whispering my beliefs to certain people, and because there's nothing to hide. I don't hate Christians. I don't hate non-Jews. Like I think that should be more spoken about. I think that the things that are public out there, like it'll be like some viral clip that somebody saw of a rabbi saying like the non-Jews are gonna worship all of us in a few years, and then it goes viral and it goes crazy, and that's the only thing they see. And I would love for this conversation to go viral. I'm sure people are gonna pick it apart and find problems with it. But if you have a mind or a heart or a little bit, if your IQ is above 3, you should have the ability to be like, this is a pretty intelligent conversation. These guys are open-minded, they're loving, they're accepting.
This is tip of the iceberg also. We're not going through a page of Talmud
we have so much more.
Deciphering with Rashi and Tosfos. Just one thing, I saw you recently did a trip to Crown Heights, maybe fairly recently.
Yeah.
What was that like? That was your first time,
Wow,
right?
First time as a Baal Tshuva, as somebody who acknowledges like I'm going to the Mecca. Like this is the this is the holy, the second holy land. And so going there with that mindset, it was definitely it was cool. It was open. It was definitely opening my eyes to so much that I missed out on. I think that it kind of further stamped like everything we just talked about, where I was like, where was I? What was I doing my whole life? But that was just one trip. I was with Rabbi Konikoff. I was only there for a day. So
what was your favorite part? If you had
I went all over 770, all in the places that a lot of people weren't necessarily getting into, and people do, but they were shut down for the day, the tours and stuff. So I was being walked around, which was cool. Obviously, like I knew of these things, but I never saw mitzvah tanks, and I never knew of, like it's not in Florida like that. So just to see this lifestyle, this culture,
EMS service.
it was I'm there davening with a bunch of people that I think they only looked at me because I brought a camera in, so like it looks strange. But I still, like I said, even though I'm in 770, I'm dressed like this, I still felt home. I still felt like it still felt cool to me.
One thing I love about Crown Heights and 770 is like everybody is the same.
100%.
The same is in maybe a italicized
saying,
yeah. But we're all just here. You know what I mean? Nobody really cares to ask where you come from.
Yeah.
I remember actually I was in 770 once and Matasiel walked in.
Yeah.
And the only reason why we recognized him was because he's like a foot taller.
Big guy.
I was like, who's the tall guy?
Right,
like
exactly.
Nobody cared about
it. Had nothing to do with it was a tall guy, right?
But Crown Heights really is we just came back. We did a weekend, a little shout out to the Encounter CYP. Yeah. We did a weekend retreat and we took some people for the first time to Ohel as well.
Oh yeah, I went there. I forgot. I totally left it out.
It's sort of not Crown Heights.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's Queens.
Right.
I totally forgot though, but I did that around the same time. It was a very crazy experience because me and my wife had been married in the last couple of years, and she decided she wanted to get a sheitel. She got a sheitel. So we were taking all these big steps. We visited Ohel for the first time. My dad, who he never reads anything. Like he would consider himself atheist. Like, but my dad, like when you bring him around these things, like his soul like awakens. So he actually stayed longer in there. He was reading Tehillim longer than any of us. And he's like, and I'm gonna read a page. How old are you? He's reading for the age. My son is 30. I'm gonna read Tehillim 30. So he's reading all these things based on he's doing it his way. And it was cool to see because like we already went in, we did what we did. I went in for a minute, I walked out like, okay, cool. Like it was a tourist attraction to like whatever. I'm not saying like that, but my dad was in there, for 20 minutes reading. And this is something that I never saw. So that was really cool to me. And yeah, so 770 oil, my wife got a sheitel, all these things happened within this. So it was a big step in our...
Sheitel's a wig.
Yeah.
Right?
So it was a big step in our teshuvah journey. So it was...
you mentioned atheism. We spoke a lot about religion.
Yeah.
What's your...
Dude, atheism bothers me so much. Specifically, I don't mind when someone is like, so they have agnostics, right? Which somebody says, I acknowledge God exists, but I don't really think about it much. I don't really like. I'm not gonna go out of his way and say he doesn't exist, because atheism ends up to me being very culty. If people start looking to like gather as atheists, it seems very ironic to me. Like if you're just an atheist by yourself and you keep that to like that's okay because you're an atheist. But I find with the internet, with social media, atheists are starting to gather. And like that feels more like Satanism to me because you're gathering around the idea of nothing. You're gathering around the idea that like, it's like I wouldn't get together with a group of people that don't believe in aliens. You see, like we'd get together because we believe in aliens and UFOs because that's something. So that makes sense. Like if we all got together, like, yeah, aliens definitely don't exist, right? Like none of us, we're just going to keep that to ourselves. You know what I mean? So it's strange to me when atheists almost preach, God's not real. Like, that sounds more like you're preaching against, that's strange, you know what I mean? So I have a problem with atheists that look at it like a religion versus atheists that just don't think about God.
Dogmatic
atheism. Yeah, it's like, that's my problem. And I find that that's growing extremely, like, don't get me wrong, I think people are getting closer with God and religion's growing as well and monotheism is growing, but I also think atheism is also growing in the worst possible way. Like, it's not just like, God doesn't exist, let's just not talk about it again.
So shout out to God. Closing remarks.
Shout out to Hashem, man. Shout out to my family. Shout out to my parents. Thank you for making this incredible platform. I would love to come back and talk regularly about.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, I would love to talk regularly. I think my audience would love to see that as well. And no matter how much we talk about this, comments will still be like, "So he's a Christian, right?" Like it doesn't matter. So, but I'm looking forward to still talking about this. So.
Of course, and we'll go down every path. We'll go down every conversation. I think the conversations have to be had. Some people have patience for it. I sometimes have patience for it more than others. I remember I was once talking to a Chabad Rabbi, and there's some atheist kid, and he's arguing this, he's arguing that, and the rabbi is like, listen, do whatever you want. We're doing this, right? This is the program. Like, you want to go that way? Go. I'm not telling you what to do.
Go have fun.
And it was impressive to. I always love to have this conversation. I always love to argue and debate, and in a respectful way, and to learn, and okay, well, why do you think the way you do, and where is that come
Jews,
from?
As many
and some guys are like, it's just do whatever you want. we're davening at 10 o'clock.
That's it.
Anyway, so thanks so much. A pleasure always.
Thank you.
HiRez, Jesse Friedman.
Appreciate you.
Check your stuff out online.
Thank you.
You're well represented, and we'll do this again soon.
Thank you. I'd love to. Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you so much for having me, Rabbi. Yeah, you can check me out, HiRez, anywhere. HiRez the Rapper, Instagram, Twitter, HiRez TV on YouTube. Basically, type in HiRez. You can find me almost anywhere. I appreciate you. Thank you. And this was The Everyday Rabbi, an awesome interview with HiRez, Jesse, a close friend, and a celebrity in Orlando. To be able to come on the podcast and talk about all things Jewish and all things God and all things spiritual. Because at the end of the day, what matters is connecting to a higher power in whichever way you can and you want to. And that's really the first step. Go learn, open a book, instead of arguing online with people who don't care about you. And you can't read the Talmud in one day. It's not possible. You're not going to finish Talmud in one sitting. Or if you finish in a year, you're doing amazing. Yeah. So stay tuned. Like, comment, subscribe. The Everyday Rabbi. Have a great day.